Kyle, what do the first 90 days of 2025 look like if you're a rental operation? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, well, hopefully it's some warmer weather. We're here in Brainerd, Minnesota, and it was 4 degrees this morning.
Cold enough for you?
Yeah, very cold, much colder than Atlanta, Georgia. I think tomorrow will be negative. I don't know if I've ever been below negative in my life, so
Welcome.
New records for me, yes. But so first 90 days, I think warmer weather, of course. But obviously this is the time when people are making decisions or switching systems. I know it's the turn of a new year. Almost every year, January 2nd comes in, I get a bunch of emails. People want to switch software, New Year's resolution. But the important thing for rental companies right now is getting the systems, the processes in place. So when it gets busy and the ground thaws and it's warmer, you're ready to rock and roll. Because what you don't want to do is switch processes systems in the middle of the summer when everything's going crazy. So right now it's a lot of people doing some thinking, some planning, figuring out what does the rest of the year look like. Obviously we've got the ARA show in a few weeks, AED's coming up, California Rental Rally. There's a lot of events happening. And this is always the most exciting time for me because people are making decisions and they're trying to figure out where does the next year go. So this is my Super Bowl season. I love the winter time because people are really gearing up for the rental season.
Do you think that they have enough time if they're going to make a switch in January to get everything up and going confidently before busy season?
Yeah, I mean, I think if this is the time, right? So if you make a decision early February, you launch in March, then you're off and running. Challenge is if you have kinks to work out and April comes around and you're getting really busy, right? That's when it gets, hair on fire a little bit. But you do have enough time. What challenges me is when people are like, hey, we want to roll out in April. We want to change whatever, new GPS and whatever, new system, and it's also busy season. That's when it gets harder for people because you want to be able to have the training wheels on when it's a little bit slower.
Definitely. So speaking of this year, getting started, what are your rental predictions for 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was looking at some other outside the rental industry, but people who just sort of predict how does 2024 look like, and you look at their predictions of what happened. In reality, is no one really knows, So I would be speculating, guessing. I think people are talking about growth, tempered growth, not 2021, 2022 growth levels, but still, the growing economy, growing rental industry. Obviously the equipment side has changed where it was super backed up a few years ago. You couldn't get anything, had to wait a year. That's changed. I think the phrase we hear about is more normalized growth. That's what I think. Again, black swan events happen. Who knows what actually will happen? So generally prediction, I think just general confidence and optimism for this year. I do think outside of that, I think we're going to see, we'll talk about some of the technology things, but I think we've talked to a lot of rental companies, and on average, people are using 4 different systems, right? So they have an accounting system, and a payment system, and a GPS system, and maybe they're using Rouse, and they've got a rental software and a website. All these things, they don't talk to each other. I think as we kind of go into this year, I think you're going to see a lot more integrations, things working better together, which ultimately saves rental operators time. There's a lot of inefficiencies in the back office side of things, and I'm sort of in the position of being able to talk to a lot of the providers, and there's a lot of technology providers, not just rental softwares, but the people who work with GPS, et cetera, and there is a lot of appetite for bringing these things closer together. Not a one-off, one-way integration, but like deep integrations. And where technology has sort of developed in the last few years is with an open API ecosystem. And I really think that's the future of not just technology, but rental software in particular, is a more integrated ecosystem. So I think as this year goes along, that's sort of what I'm excited about, is bringing in other partners and sort of tying systems together a little bit more closely.
Yeah, so kind of making everyone's tech stack a little less stacked.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's what Apple has been able to do so well, right?
Yeah.
That's why everyone loves it. They want their iPhone, their iPad, they want everything together so that no matter where they're at, they can see their entire system of their business.
Right.
Because, Quipli's coming out with your state of the industry, and even your rental company, customers are saying that, right?
Yeah.
70% of them, we're inefficient. We need help.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, which we haven't touched yet, but other companies are looking at outside of rental in particular, is how can you use AI? And one of the cases that we're seeing that people are talking about is like for data format, right? Because you may have a piece of equipment, it's called 10 different names, right? And what Rouse calls it is different than what the ARA taxonomy uses, which is different than your rental software, which is different than your website. But you can now use AI to start to streamline some of the things, the naming conventions, the taxonomy. So There's a lot of use cases for AI, but one of which I'm excited about is when we talk about an integrated ecosystem, right? Using AI to tighten some of those conventions, some of those integrations, because ultimately, like we talked about their State of the Union report coming out later this month, 70% of rental companies say they're inefficient, and they're on average using 4 different systems, right? And they're losing time, they're missing rentals, they're losing profit because of this. And if you can bring these things tighter, integrated, right? It's better for everyone.
So what you're saying, I want to know more without getting too technical.
Yeah.
What you're saying is, if you're using 4 systems, AI can help bridge the gap between them all.
Right.
And so that you're speaking one language.
Yeah, and you don't need AI to do that, but it can help smooth out some of those integrations.
Okay.
For Quipli, for example, by the end of January, we'll have 10 different partners we integrate with. So, we're integrating with Rouse right now. We integrate with TaxJar for taxes, QuickBooks Online, Stripe, Boom and Bucket for valuations. There's a whole list of groups that we're looking at. A GPS partner we haven't announced yet we're integrating with. And if you can have one source of truth, which often is the rental software, right? That occupies the control point. That is like the core of the data. And they're really good. If you're a rental software, you're really good at inventory management, the point of sale, transaction, right? If you kind of do that really well, I don't need to be an expert at GPS. I don't need to be an expert on accounting necessarily, right? But if I can push out to all those different partners and sort of like the hub and spoke model, that's when everything really, really hums. And where technology is now that wasn't there 10 years ago, 20 years ago, is now with APIs, you can actually integrate seamlessly into these different systems, right? So if you're a rental company, great, I don't have to spend time reconciling 10 different things every day. Everything just happens automatically. That's nirvana.
That was going to be my question. So if somebody is in their rental software and they have all these integrations, they're not going to feel like they're using all of the spokes, right? They're using the hub, but you've taken the spokes to them.
That's right. Like, if this all works as well as we hope it will and expect to, like, people won't even think about integration or API. It just works. It's magic, right? Like, when I worked at Uber, some of the founders were talking about like that first moment when you ever called an Uber for the first time, and you click a button and the car just shows up in 2 minutes, and it felt like magic, right? What happened under the scenes, there's 1,000 different things flowing around. So I think that's sort of, and this is a prediction that'll take longer than 2025, but it's kind of go in the future. It just feels like magic, right? Everything just works, and you're not sitting there thinking about, how do I make sure my credit card processing ledger matches with my accounting ledger? And every time I update a price on my back-end rental system, how do I make sure it updates on my website?
Yeah.
It just works. You have one center console you log into, you make an update, and it just pushes everywhere at once. Like, that is where I think the future of rental's going.
Do you think that magic will translate to the customer feeling it too? Like you were just talking about the Uber experience of they pushed the button and it was like magic. I think first thing is taking care of the rental company because they know how to take care of their customers, we hope. But how does that translate to the customer experience?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately that's what matters, right? Like, it's generating an amazing customer experience. That's how you build loyalty. And I think about when we started Quipli 4 or 5 years ago, the first version of Quipli was just a website with you can take payment, et cetera. But the reality is someone booked a reservation, and then you had someone get an email and they checked the inventory system, and then they responded, then the customer came in, you still had to swipe it. And it was like, it sort of faked what an integration looked like. And reality was, you lost an hour or two of, but when everything flows together, customers can see everything in one system that's fully integrated, right? So they can log onto your website, they can see what bills they have to pay you, they can request maintenance, they can see GPS locations of the rented equipment, and ultimately they have access to all that data themselves. Like, that is a better customer experience for sure.
For sure, yeah.
And that's what the Nationals are doing, right? United came out in Q1 of last year. They said 70% of their revenue was coming through their digital channels. So it was the mobile app, the customer portal, the website. People want to transact digitally. They want to have access to data. They want to engage transparently. We talked to some rental companies, and they're still hesitant around putting pricing online, which I understand. At the same time, like, where things are moving, it's just a different world. People don't respond as well to cold calls, cold emails. How many cold emails do you get? I mean, it's nonstop, right? People have sort of moved past that.
Yeah.
What we found is in the B2B software world, which is where we live, 80% of the buying process has happened before they even book a demo with you. So, they want to go online and see a demo themselves, click around. They want to see references. They want to see reviews. They do a lot of shopping before they even call you. And because of that, you have to be transparent. You have to have a great brand. You have to build reputation management, reviews. And I think that's happening in the rental industry. The customers and the rental companies that lean into that around transparent pricing and giving access to all the data, those are the ones that will win. It's just a different world than it was even 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could go take a whole tangential conversation and how content flows into all of that, but we won't do that today. That's not what we're talking about.
On content, though, people already know, everyone loves ChatGPT, but you can now quickly tell if it's a ChatGPT article, right? They got the dashes in there, and I was talking to someone else. There's one of our friends. He just keeps posting ChatGPT articles on LinkedIn, and you just know. And people are sort of, they're not duped by that. So it still has to be authentic communication, right?
Yes. I think that's where it's kind of a good segue into our first segment here of AI or no.
All right.
So I'm going to ask you, you can answer whether for yourself, for Quipli, or for a rental company, if you would use AI tools to do the following tasks.
Okay.
Number 1, writing a blog, which we just talked about. Yes, no, AI. AI or no?
Yeah, well, I just sort of gave my answer there. I mean, I think it can help. What I use it for is, proofreading, making sure there's no grammar, or like, hey, I'm sending a long email. Can you review this? Let me know how you would receive this email. What would be the feeling you would get? If you're generating things from scratch, if it's a low importance, it's fine. If it's low importance, that's fine. But like content creation, I think it has to be good content, right? With ChatGPT now, I could just write 1,000 articles a day, right? But that's not actually what matters. It has to be good, unique content. So I think there's use cases for blogs. I would say more around the proofreading, making sure you're not missing things, making sure your tone's right. Generating it from scratch, I think people can tell. I would be hesitant about that.
One thing that I've done, we do a lot of interviewing, we do a lot of talking to people, is can you help, give me 10 questions you would ask someone in this scenario. Mm-hmm. We've done that for interviews of rental companies just because it's a place to start.
Yeah.
And I would say of those 10 questions, we maybe use 2 of them.
Right.
But blank page syndrome is real, and sometimes people just need to see something to go, okay, I can take it and I can tear this apart, but at least it's somewhere to start.
It's much easier to edit than create. Yes. And I think just for idea creation, that would be, hey, I'm thinking about writing a blog about the importance of technology and rental. Mm-hmm. Like, what would be 3 to 5 topics to think about?
Yes.
Right? I think it would be great for that.
Yes. Okay. AI or no? Accounting.
Accounting. It gets a little dangerous when you are talking money and people's money. That one, we don't touch that right now. I think some opportunities, though, are around the data and analyzing trends, right? So saying, we were just talking in the other room, utilization numbers, and how do you think about metrics, right? But what if AI could then come in and say, hey, we think these 3 assets you don't have enough of them because of the utilization numbers we're seeing. We recommend you think about buying these different assets. AI can do that today. I would definitely recommend doing things like that. In terms of sending, invoices to customers going rogue, I would not do that yet. But I think where AI is on the accounting side is identifying trends, opportunities, things like that. For our own Quipli accounting, we don't use it, but I think for rental companies, I think particularly on utilization and looking at particular assets, underperforming, overperforming assets, short of the brain of thinking through some of those things, I think there's an opportunity there.
Totally. So more of forecasting, data analysis, but don't let AI do your taxes. Right?
Not yet.
Okay, AI or no? Customer service.
That one is always been the starting point, I feel like. So I would say yes for that. But I think you have to be clear that this is an AI bot. What I would not recommend is saying, hey, I'm Kyle, I'm a real person, but it's really an AI bot. That, again, we talk about building trust and transparency. I wouldn't do that. But, for example, we have customer service AI bot within Quipli right now, right? In the bottom right corner, it's called Quipli Mate. Hey, how do I edit an order? If you want an answer in 5 seconds and you don't want to have to call or email someone, there's a great use case for that. Low-hanging fruit, it can typically point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
I think that's a no-brainer to do. the thing that I've seen, I don't know if you've seen the voice call. Like we had a plumber at our house. And I was on the phone with them for 5 minutes before I realized it was not a person. It's that good. The thing that it was amazing, and it was really fast and really good. The only thing I wish they had done is said that this is an AI bot. Because at the end I was like, I had my wife listening, and I was like, do you think this is real? And they're like, you can't ask this. So I ended up saying, hey, are you a real person or not at the end? And they paused for a second, and they're like, no, I'm an AI bot. But I was like, for a second, I was like, is this going to be a person or not? And I think the experience would have been better if they had said this is like an AI thing up front. But like that's out there in the world today, right? So I think like, again, what I would have said for that is be transparent about that. Yeah. But on customer service, the other thing we've talked about is so we have this bot within the back-end side, but what if you could put it on your website? So say, hey, I need to, and this is something we're actually working on right now, but you can say, hey, I'm whatever, I'm hanging Christmas lights, and they can start recommending pieces of equipment that you have in your fleet, because that's what happens when you come into a store, right? They sort of ask you, what are you doing? What sort of equipment would fit? I think there's an opportunity for that today, right? And particularly if it's at midnight and you're looking for stuff, and you're not going to be able to call a rental company, being able to have that 24/7 access, I think there's use cases for sure on the customer service side, as long as you're upfront that this is an AI.
I think that's crucial. I was just yesterday listening to a podcast. Micro was talking to Jack Carr, and they were talking about originality and AI taking over art and all these other things. Mm-hmm. But their thought was, I think you just have to let the consumer choose. Mm-hmm. Tell them this is your experience if you're going to, you're going to talk to an AI, because like you said, it would have made me feel better if I knew up front. I still would have done it, but it just kind of changes what your brain is like. Yeah. And their thought was like, if somebody forges art and you paid, billions of dollars for it, does it change if it was a forgery from AI or not? I mean, that's a completely different topic, but at the same time, it's basically just labeling this as an AI versus a human. And I think that in customer service, there's space for both, and there's obviously a need for both.
And that's a great idea, having people opt into that. So it's like, look, you have a on your customer website, right? You can get an answer in 2 seconds with this AI bot, and it'll tell you what's available, what we'd recommend, or you can call and we may pick up, or you got to call between 8 to 6. You can email us, we'll respond within 5 hours, right? Like, what do you want to do? Well, if I'm a human, unless it's a very complicated question, like, I'm going to go for the quick answer, because I bet 80% of the time it'll solve what you need.
Right. And if not, give it a shot. And then if you need to talk to someone.
Okay, you wasted 15 seconds. Great.
And in the future what it can tell you and what it can't tell you. I felt that way with the Delta.
And the crazy thing is, we are probably interacting with AI bots on a regular basis that we don't even realize. Like that phone call, the fact that I was 5 minutes into a phone call before I even realized.
That is creepy. That means like the cadence, like they've picked up on.
What it was the pause. So like we're sort of talking back and forth, but it was like a 2-second pause. But the actual things they were saying and the tone was spot on. It was the hesitation. And even when I put my wife on the phone, I was like, I got to ask. And she was like, you cannot ask. She thought it was a real person. That's how good it was. So I'm like, okay, I was almost duped by that. There's probably things happening that we don't even realize. We're talking to AI on a regular basis.
I mean, good on the plumbing service. That's a very sophisticated.
Yeah, so like, they're a local company, sort of like a local rental company. They probably partner with the technology company, right, to like provide that service on top. And I think it was awesome outside of, I feel like they were being a little misleading, because I thought I was talking to a human. Yes. But at least they were honest when I asked it, whatever it is.
And giving it a go, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, last one, AI or no? Troubleshooting. That's a really big, vague term, so I'll let you take that however you want.
Yeah, I think, well, if you're troubleshooting software, I think that goes in the Quipli mate. We can probably help some of that. But the reality is, if there's like a complicated troubleshooting root cause, you likely need to get to a human for that. Although I think that first layer of like understanding, is it actually an issue or not, you can kind of point that way. I mean, if you're troubleshooting like equipment, I think there's also like tier 1 level support where you can make recommendations. I think the thing you got to get that's different between software and heavy equipment is like, well, there's a safety element, right? So
100%.
If I say, hey, you should, in the software, you should click here to edit an order, and it's really on the other page, well, no one's going to get injured.
Right.
But if you're recommending how to operate a piece of heavy equipment, and you're recommending it to someone who shouldn't be operating it, or you're not understanding the situation, and someone's injured, like who's liable for that? So I think that's why people are a little bit more hesitant on the troubleshooting of the equipment side, because there's a physical element to that, and there needs to be the proper parameters around that.
I did see somebody put it in the Facebook group. They uploaded a picture of a broken piece of equipment. I can't even remember what it was. And they asked ChatGPT, what do you think is wrong with this? Oh, it's a trailer hitch. What do you think is wrong with this? And ChatGPT answered them, and it was pretty good. So I don't know long term if I think there's applications for AI to help with like teaching tools for mechanics and some of those positions where they do need to like learn what's going on. But like you said, the safety piece is so crucial that I think for a very long time that's going to be a human-driven
and I think you're going to want someone to sign off on all this stuff. So maybe the first 80% is done by an AI recommendation, right? But the final sign-off, checking, I think you're going to want a human in between. And definitely like starting internally, right? So internal fixes of equipment rather than making recommendations to the end user out in the field, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And that's why we started with our side, like, you know, the AI bot was for internal operators, because the margin of safety, the margin of error, whatever, is lower.
Yeah.
People aren't going to die if you mess up, right?
Yes, right. Okay, we are going to do a new fun game called the UFO segment. I know you love UFOs. This is a little different. This is unique, funny, or original headlines. I have 3 headlines here. I'm going to read them all, and then you decide where we're going to take the conversation next.
Okay.
Number 1, Ireland and America are using 3D printers to build housing projects. Number 2, technology will help construction tackle the theft problem. Number 3, construction jealous of other sectors' robots. Are cobots the answer?
I could talk about all those. I'll probably talk about the second one around the theft side, although at some point, this is separate. Like, when does an AI get jealous? You know, like, you know, I don't know. Separate thing. On the theft problem, that's something that in the Facebook groups every day. Someone, you know, this morning Ed Craddock was recommending when someone walks in with red flags, you start stacking your pens.
Such a cool thing.
Yeah. And, you know, the person sees that and they start taking notes on that person, right? Like, I love how innovative and like industrious people are to like help solve that problem with pens. Like, I think we should do that. At the same time, I think we need to incorporate technology to cut down on some of these things. So one thing we're working on coming out this quarter is Quipli Protect, which helps protect your equipment assets from theft, from damage, et cetera. So it's multiple features there that I can kind of talk about. And I think this is table stakes stuff we're coming out with. And I think as you kind of get into the future, there's a lot of other things you can do here. So like for us coming out this quarter, when a new renter comes in, you can scan the front and back of the license. It'll give you a score of 0 to 100. How legit is that license? There's a threshold, you can pass or fail it. And then have the customer take a selfie, and it'll match that person matches the license using AI, right? So that's coming out in January. That's already out there. We also have an integration. We talked about integration partners with SICE, Specialty Equipment Insurance Services, for damage waiver, so people can opt in and out with one click. If equipment's damaged or stolen, et cetera, that is being applied to that individual rental contract with one button. So every time someone walks in to transact in person or online, you're getting coverage on your assets directly with one click. You're not having to file a bunch of claims and all these different paperworks. Talked about integration, just one click, all that's added. That just came out last month. Other things, basic things like being able to store credit cards indefinitely on your system, being able to apply indefinite holds. So typically credit card providers do 7-day holds. With Quipli, you can reset that every 7 days. You can even have a 30-day or 60-day hold in your card. So if something comes back damaged or stolen, that's already incorporated. There's fraud checks you can use. We're part of the license scanning. You can see if someone's on an OFAC terrorist list. You can run all these checks behind the scenes. So when essentially all you do is you put the license into the machine, 15 different checks are happening behind the scenes. You're getting a license, selfie, matching, all that. All this is happening behind the scenes. Like, that's all coming out buy the A ratio for us.
Cool.
And that's like very basic stuff. So then you're like, how do you build on that? Well, there's so many things you can lay on top of that. But we're talking about solving the theft problem. That's something that's been top of mind for us because we hear about it from people all the time. We talked to someone I won't name, been in the industry for a long time, and decided not to run a person's license because they had gut feel. And anyways, that piece of equipment was stolen. They ended up tracking it down later. And so I think as good as you can be as a human, we're all flawed. So I think having technology, again, as a backbone, as a sort of a double check for all these different things, I think is important.
Yeah.
In an ideal world, someone walks in, they're a good person, they check out, nothing happens, right? But like behind the scenes, what happens if someone who's trying to defraud you or steal or damage a piece of equipment, we're running all of these checks behind the scenes that you're only being notified when something's failing a pass. For example, let's just say someone from the OFAC terrorist list walks in to rent something. Now with Quipli, when you swipe your license, that is being pinged behind the scenes, and you're going to get a pop-up message to say, hey, this person failed the background check because of X, Y, Z. Like, you can still rent to them. It's your decision.
Right.
But like that's happening behind the scenes. So when I talk about like the magic side, that's another integration, right? Being able to integrate with these like background check providers. That's what like amazing looks like. It's you're protecting your assets, but the technology is doing the work for you. It's just flagging things, right? So you can still override and make the decision, but it takes some of the work off of you where you're not having to size up someone and stack the pens necessarily. You should still do that. Technology is sort of the insurance behind the scenes.
Yeah, I love that. I think, 2025 sounds like the year of efficiency almost.
Yeah.
AI to make your life easier, not to replace, but to aid, right? AI agents to help.
Yeah.
To help rental companies be more efficient.
Yeah, and AI agents is a good phrase because I think what will happen is you have 100 different workflows in your software, but at different key points, you can have an AI bot sort of solve that particular thing. So, example, like we talked about, like you're running your end of period reporting on your utilization numbers. You can click generate or analyze results, right? And AI looks at it and goes, hey, here are the top 3 performing assets, the bottom 3 performing assets, and here's our recommendation, right? That's a little AI use case. Another one could be someone walks in and it's your first day on the job and you don't really know all the equipment you have.
Right.
And someone says, hey, I'm hanging Christmas lights. What do I need? You type that in. It'll recommend this particular product because you have 10 of them and it's the right thing for this customer. And it's, again, the front counter brain. That's another AI use case. So when I think about like AI in rental in particular, like you're going to have your core workflows. It's going to be these small AI agents that make, things, 50%, 10% faster, right? And if you can stack 20 of those over different things, right, then you start to really change how people operate inside a rental business, drive a lot of efficiencies, and ultimately have a better customer experience.
Yeah. And then, all of those little things over the course of 52 weeks of a year, we're in a completely different position in January of 2026. Yeah. And then you're ready to just fly, I feel like, right?
Yeah, and I think it's a game of inches, these incremental things, they start to add up. And I think, the idea that people generally overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but underestimate in 10 years. So I don't know when this AI transformation fully happens, but if we're sitting here 10 years from now, like, I think the way rental companies operate will not be recognizable. Like, I think it'll be totally different, and there'll be ups and downs to get there, but I think there'll be more change in the next 10 years than the last 50 years in rental because of technology is changing, but I think there's also, we're seeing there's people wanting to adopt this. There's an appetite for change, for innovation. We talked about the pen example a few times. That's innovation. People are constantly trying to improve how they operate. The good news now is technology is allowing people to move faster. It just keeps changing faster and faster and faster. Like where technology and AI in particular is going, it's moving very fast.
I think we could talk for another 45 minutes about the rental store of the future, but I think we should probably stop right there.